President Jacob Zuma has been inaugurated over the weekend and was quick to announce his new cabinet, which has a lot of us puzzled about some things and interested in others. I'm joined by News 24 staffers Essie Moses and Roy McKenzie to discuss the new cabinet. Thanks, guys.
Pleasure.
Now, it was a major shake-up. Were we expecting this?
Look, I think some of it stayed the same as expected, but there were a couple of surprises. I think probably largely in the finance ministry, and the fact that education stayed the same. I'm quite surprised by that.
Right, Roy, we were expecting some type of shake-up to happen in education, especially considering the education crisis we find ourselves in.
You mean the textbook delivery and all of that?
Right.
Yeah, it was interesting because both the higher education ministry and the basic education ministry were largely, they were untouched. I think Angie Majek is seen as largely doing a good job there. I mean, a lot of the problems in the ministry were, not seen as her fault necessarily, and she was seen as being quite proactive. The fact that DA leader Helen Zille even came out in her support is quite interesting.
It is very interesting. Helen Zille saying that actually she appreciates the continuity that keeping those people in those positions gives.
Well, let's hope that that proves to be the case in the long term, and, well, maybe they do need another term, to get things rolling properly and keep the ball rolling, so to speak, in the education sector, because it's sorely needed.
But do we get the impression that Jacob Zuma is rewarding loyalty more than ability?
I think there was that, yes, and and a lot of people have been, criticizing him as almost rewarding ineffectual ministers as well. So you've got to wonder exactly why, and I think loyalty and power plays within the ANC are largely to credit for that.
But there have also been some huge demotions, really.
There has. I think probably the biggest one is for Natem Tetwa, who's been demoted to Arts and Culture, our former police
minister.
Yes, whose Marikana happened under his watch. And I think also he's probably being taken to task for letting a lot of the Nkandla things slip. I suppose not doing enough damage control in good time, I'd say.
And we've also seen Jekadebe being moved away from justice. So a few people, it seems, are getting wrapped over the knuckles. But of course,
especially in the security cluster.
Exactly, that's the very interesting thing.
Although Khadebe hasn't he been put into the Minister of Presidency?
Yes, so he'll be.
I'm not sure if that's
number one's right.
Demotion as such
true.
Is kind of like let me keep my security cluster as close to me as possible. Is almost the impression that one does get.
Right, but coming through on social media a lot, people are saying it seems that government is the only place where you get a promotion from being ineffective. Could it be true?
Could be.
Yes, we'll see.
Now, not to toot our own horn or anything, but News 24 have got quite a lot of very interesting insight into the cabinet reshuffle, especially a very specific article on the 5 things we can take away from the cabinet reshuffle. So let's have a look at that too.
Yeah. It's actually quite a nice summation, just little bits of actually maybe this is kind of what you need to know if you don't have time to actually go and look at the entire cabinet and what has been done. It just nicely summarizes the 5 main points, and it's not necessarily related to specific ministries, but just what you can take out of the shake-up as it is.
Absolutely. So the first one, and we won't go into it in too much detail, is that women have been given higher positions or have got positions in the executive, and that's really important, of course.
Especially after the ANC failed to make many women premiers. So they were largely criticized for that. So it is very important that the gender parity is seen in cabinet at least.
And also Helen Zille's 200% increase in her.
Yes, tell us about that.
From 0 to 2.
Good for her.
Fantastic.
Good for her. The second point, top performers were retained. So specifically cited in this article is Aaron Motoledi from the health department.
Yes, that's a good one actually. I'm glad that the health portfolio was retained because he's been doing a good job.
Right. The third point, that it pays to be on number one's good side, and let's face it, it kind of does.
It does. I think we've discussed that already. Loyalty is certainly being rewarded.
Right, so now we see former Gauteng Premier, Nomvula Mokonyane, moving over to a new department. I think it is, of a water and sanitation.
Yeah.
So a new ministry, essentially.
She's kind of been known as the Miss Fix-It.
Right.
So, I think maybe she's being brought in to kind of see that services get delivered.
Now, Roy, you'll remember when we were on the IEC floor during election times, she was there and there were lots of people asking her what her future was in Gauteng, and she remained quite mum on the issue.
She did indeed, yes.
Do you think she knew?
I wonder. I think she knew that she was, not in favour in Gauteng anymore, and that she would be probably ousted as the premier there. So obviously, with loyalty to the president, she knew that there would be something else there. And what Essie said, she is known as, being very proactive, and the ANC looking to local government elections in 2 years' time is very, you can see that is where they're focusing, and she will get things delivered, and water and sanitation is a crucial service delivery issue.
Right, which is why it was made a new ministry in and of itself.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you are looking towards provincial elections in 2016.
Right. So there are obviously two other points under that article, news24.com, that's where it can be found. But before we wrap up for today, let's speak about finance.
Yes, I think a lot of people were taken by surprise that Pravin Gordhan there was a lot of talk that he was going to be retiring perhaps, so a lot of people didn't expect him to be shifted to another ministry. I think it's very good that his deputy has taken over from him, so that there will be continuity, which will appease the markets and keep the financial policy on track of the government. But it's very interesting where he's been shifted to. Cooperative governance is very much where all the service delivery protests and all of that sort of thing has been happening, and he is known as a very efficient minister, so he will hopefully address a lot of these issues, especially in the run-up to the...
hopefully it's also, maybe it's also just a case of cleaning up provincially before people go to the polls again to vote municipally.
Right. It could be just a very clever electioneering ploy, really, looking forward. But let's face it, cooperative governance really needs a lot of work. It needs somebody strong in there.
It has been a bit of a disaster, to put it mildly.
Very mildly. But what do we know about the former Deputy Minister of Finance, who's now our Minister of Finance? Other than the fact that he fell off the chair the one time. That poor man, that's going to follow him around everywhere.
Shame.
Yeah. Look, he has been the Deputy Minister. He has, he's proved himself there, and I think there's the continuity, which is the most important thing for the markets.
I think also because that ministry is quite stable, I think it's probably easier to do the transition to the deputy, because the same macroeconomic policies are going to be followed. So there isn't, you have to, I suppose, just keep an eye on it and keep it going. But it remains to be seen.
Right, well, we'll certainly be keeping an eye on everything. For the latest on these stories and more, and to find out exactly who are new members of Cabinet, visit news24.com, follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.